done now.
Pic Six!
Visionary or misguided dreamer? Ed Wood, directed by Tim Burton, is a quirky and heartfelt biographical dramedy that chronicles the life and career of Edward D. Wood Jr., a filmmaker notorious for creating some of the most infamously bad movies in Hollywood history. Set in the 1950s Hollywood, the film follows Wood, played by Johnny Depp, as he relentlessly pursues his passion for filmmaking despite limited talent, minuscule budgets, and a revolving door of eccentric collaborators. Fueled by optimism and an unshakable belief in his art, he directs cult classics like Glenn or Glinda, Plan 9 from Outer Space, even earning the title of the worst director of all time. Along the way, Wood befriends and champions an aging, morphine-addicted Bela Lugosi, played by Martin Landau, in an Academy Award-winning performance, casting him in bizarre, low-budget horror films in a desperate attempt to revive his career. As Wood struggles to balance his artistic dreams, relationships, financial hardships, he remains steadfast in his unique, if highly unconventional vision. Blending comedy, tragedy, and old-school Hollywood charm, Ed Wood is a love letter to outcasts, dreamers, and the undying spirit of independent filmmaking. This is Ed Wood.
Tim Burton, director of Batman, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands, now takes you to a completely different world. The true story of a Hollywood legend, Ed Wood.
And action!
He made movies like no one else.
You want to keep moving. You've got to get through that door. Ah, that was perfect.
Perfect. Do you know anything about film production?
Well, I like to think so.
He had an eye for talent.
I met Bela Lugosi.
Well, I thought he was dead.
This is the most uncomfortable coffin I've ever been in.
No, he's very much alive. You flying saucer?
He had a passion for storytelling.
Get me transvestites. I need transvestites.
You're flashy. They want that. Okay. But they want professionalism, so nix on the Nelly without losing naivete.
What kind of a movie is this?
It's science fiction. A heartbreaking romance. Grave robbers from outer space.
Grave robbers from what?
And he had a secret he couldn't hide.
I like to dress in women's clothing. Panties, sweaters, pumps. It's just something I do.
You don't like sex with girls?
No, I love sex with girls. Wearing their clothes makes me feel closer to them.
How can you act so casual when you're dressed like that?
All right, everybody, let's finish this picture.
Touchstone Pictures presents Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Sarah Jessica Parker, Patricia Arquette, and Bill Murray in the true story
Give him a hand. Keep rolling.
of an unforgettable filmmaker.
We're making another movie. I got the Church of Beverly Hills to put up the cash.
How do you get all your friends to get baptized just so you can make a monster movie?
And his legacy that will live forever.
How do you turn this on?
Shake his legs around. Looks like he's killing me. This is the one.
I command you!
This is the one I'll be remembered for.
Ed Wood, a Tim Burton film.
Really? Worst film you ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. Hello?
Pic Six!
Well, here we are, the Beau Brad Gilmore, joined by the General Jeff Smith. And Jeff, we have another movie to break down in Pic Six. This time, though, it is not my selection. This time, it is your selection. And you selected 1994's Ed Wood. And my question is, why?
I did. My first pick is 1994's Ed Wood. And so we're still in the 90s. We're sticking with 90s movies after The Phantom. This one is my favorite Tim Burton movie.
Whoa.
Which I know is a big claim. But for me, this movie came at a very important time for me in life, much like I think The Phantom did for you. This was 94, so I was a year out of high school. I was just starting film school. And I was a very rare 19-year-old in the world that knew who Ed Wood was before the movie Ed Wood came out. I had seen the book, now I forget what it's called. It's like Golden Turkey or something like that. Basically, there's a book that was released that named the worst movie of all time. This is pre-internet, of course. It had to be in a book. And Plan 9 from Outer Space was listed as the worst movie of all time. And then this is also a period where I used to vacation with my family in Walt Disney World. And we went to, at the Hollywood Studios, there still is to this day a restaurant called the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater. And it looks like an old drive-in. And you sit in cars that are tables and you watch trailers from bad 50s sci-fi movies. And one of them is Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I remember watching these and writing down on the napkin in the Sci-Fi Dine-In all the titles of the movies because I wanted to go and try to find them. There's Robot Monster and Catwomen from the Moon and the terrible, terrible movies, and Plan 9 was one of them. So I watched Plan 9, and then when Tim Burton announced he was going to make a biopic of the director of it, it felt very punk rock in a weird way for film nerds of the 90s, because it was a very small group that knew who it was. Tim Burton was coming off of Batman Returns. So this is big Tim Burton time, and it's going to be in black and white, and it's going to be weird. And Johnny Depp wasn't even huge Johnny Depp at the time. So it was just a weird idea to have a whole movie based on, and to do it in kind of a Oscar bait kind of way and have it be released by Disney. And I thought, this movie is going to bomb. Who's going to care about this? And I was right, because it did. Because nobody did. Because it's a weird thing to get Disney to release a movie based on not only a director most people had never heard of, but arguably a bad director that no one had heard of, who died in obscurity and not under the best circumstances. So I love Ed Wood. And
Yeah.
I watched, I thought it was really cool. And I thought I appreciated the recreations that they do in a lot of these kind of movies. Like when the Disaster Artist, I thought was very similar to this in that way, about The Room, where they do the recreations, and part of the joy is watching them recreate it and kind of get a kick out of that. And just watching a story about someone who the world thinks is terrible, done with very rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. So when you selected Ed Wood,
You had not seen it.
I'd never seen it. Obviously, that's part of the podcast
That's
gimmick.
the show. Yes.
I'd never seen it. I maybe had heard of it, maybe, but I had never seen a trailer. I didn't know who directed it. I didn't know who starred in it. Nothing, right? And so when I watched the movie at the time we're doing this 2 nights ago, and I was really pleasantly surprised by the cast of who was in this movie. And we'll talk about the cast here in a little bit more depth. But these are my initial thoughts. So I did not like this movie. I really, really loved this movie. I really wasn't.
Really?
I was not
Good.
expecting to enjoy it. Honestly, had it been a movie that I just was, going through Netflix or Prime on and saw, I would never stop to watch it. But because of this podcast, I was like, okay, I got to watch this movie. And this is one of those rare gems of like, wow, how did I never see this? How was this never on my radar? Because there's so many things about this movie that, 1, I completely loved, 2, understood at a deep level, 3, resonated with, and then 4, it finally helped me realize a line from our favorite sitcom of all time that I never knew what they were talking about, which is from Seinfeld, which the Chinese restaurant episode. They're going to go see Plan 9 from Outer Space. The worst movie ever made.
It's the worst movie ever made. I can't go make fun of a bad movie by myself.
I need someone to go with me.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
So I'd always heard Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I assumed, this is real, I just assumed that it was a made-up title, like they did for Rochelle, or Ponce de Leon, or whatever they are, like Flaming Globes.
Prognosis negative.
Prognosis negative, like these kind of movies.
Yeah.
And so I did not
But it's
think
very real. Very
not,
much alive.
I did not think that it was a real movie. And so I will say, yes, there's a lot of DNA in this film that I resonate with, especially coming from, I hate to even use the term creative, but as somebody who would consider himself a creative or creative,
Absolutely.
you really find yourself understanding Ed Wood at a deeper level. Now, I won't say I fully understand the cross-dressing nature of the character. It's not something that I resonated with. And perhaps it wasn't fully explained why. I think there was something with his mom or something when he was young or whatever. And it wasn't sexual at all. It was more of a comfort thing for him to dress in the angora sweaters and stuff. But other than that, yeah, loved this movie, man. Just really loved it.
Okay. You gave me no indication. I got a text from Brad after he watched it, and he said, watched it? This is going to be interesting. I'm like, you creep. That gives me nothing. Okay, good. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the movie because the idea started with the writers. It was not originally Tim Burton that was going to do it. And the writers are Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. That is how you pronounce his last name. And they have since done quite a few movies like this about real life people. I think the movie that I'm pretty sure, I think you've talked about before is the Dolomite.
Dolomite is my name.
They wrote that. And you can definitely now see very similar kind of DNA with Ed Wood and Dolomite. And it makes sense when you know, oh, same writers. Oh, yeah, okay, I can see that. But they also did Man on the Moon about Andy Kaufman. They wrote that. And they wrote The People versus Larry Flint about Larry Flint.
Oh, okay. So they got a thing.
This is what, when you need a biopic about someone you might not necessarily write a biopic about, you go to Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. And before this, they had written Problem Child and
Gilbert Gottfried.
Problem Child from the 90s. Yeah. Sorry, Gilbert Gottfried. John Ritter. And his real life wife, Amy Yasbeck. I haven't seen it in a while. Michael Richards is, I believe, in it.
That's not right. That's bad. That's a bad Gilbert Gottfried. But
Gilbert Gottfried. And so that, from what I've read before, the movie was originally much darker, and it kind of became like a family movie, and they did not have a great experience as the writers of that. And they had been fans of Ed Wood and actually wanted, Scott Alexander wanted to make a documentary about it. And then they decided instead they're going to write the script. And when they knew potentially the original director was going to be Michael Lehman, who did Heathers. And when Tim Burton came on, he was just going to be a producer. But then the writers wisely decided to, when they wrote the script, and they wrote it in something like 6 weeks or something super fast, but they wrote it knowing to Tim Burton's sensibilities. And they knew from Tim Burton's backstory that he was a big fan of Vincent Price, held Vincent Price to a very high regard. One of his first short movies is called Vincent, about a little boy that loves Vincent. And then Vincent Price had a small role in Edward Scissorhands. And they kind of had a very similar relationship to what eventually became the Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi relationship in Ed Wood. So they leaned on that a lot for Ed Wood. And the draft that they wrote is the draft that they filmed. Tim Burton read it and said, this is fine. We're making this. I want to direct it. Michael Lehman went and directed Airheads. Okay. Instead, Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley.
Fun
Ernie
movie,
Hudson,
actually. Fun movie.
Your buddy.
My buddy Ernie. Yeah, was in Airheads. He's been in everything.
Big Earn. And so then he did it. And originally it was going to be made by Columbia. But Tim Burton wanted to not only make this movie about someone you never heard of, and make a movie about someone who wore women's clothing at a time where that was shocking, and also wanted to film it in black and white. So it kind of had the same aesthetic as Ed Wood's movies. And I think it was actually, of all things, it was the black and white that Columbia went, well, we're not doing that. So Tim Burton took Ed Wood to Disney, who had just done Nightmare Before Christmas, and they wanted to get in the Tim Burton business. They knew this was not going to be a hit. So the budget was small. The advertising was small. They released it in October of 94. And I think they pushed more for, this is going to be an Oscar kind of movie, and it's not going to be a hit. The promotion is kind of weird. The trailer does mention that he likes to wear women's clothes, but they definitely include a line that Patricia Arquette says, where she says, don't you like sex with girls? No, I love sex with girls. Yeah. Wearing their clothes makes me feel closer to them. Like, don't worry, 1994, he's not gay. He just likes to wear sweaters. And they lean on that a lot. It's reiterated a few times in the movie that he's straight, but likes to wear bras and panties.
Yeah. Okay. So I love hearing the background of it, and now knowing who the writers are, it makes a lot of sense. And what'd you say his name was? Michael Lehman, who did Problem Child?
Michael Lehman. No, Michael Lehman did Heathers.
Okay, who did these guys wrote Problem Child?
The writers are they wrote Problem Child.
They wrote Problem Child. Which, by the way, if you've never seen Problem Child, it's kind of a cultish movie on its own, and I think they made a few of them. Right? They made a few of them.
The 2 was theatrical, and I think they made a 3. Kind of like Home Alone 3.
Yeah.
And now here's the Problem Child.
But Gilbert Gottfried's in that movie, and it's funny. This is the only time I can probably ever share this story. But I interviewed Gilbert Gottfried several years ago before he passed away. And obviously, but rest in peace, Gilbert Gottfried. I remember talking to him about the scene with him and Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop 2. That was like the main thing I wanted to ask him about. Like, hey, tell me about this scene and like how he and Eddie just improv the whole thing. The whole thing was an improv, which sounds right. And Gilbert was so funny. But to this day, I have an alarm that was set to remind me you have this Gilbert Gottfried interview at 9:15. And so I'm going to show you. You see that? It's
labeled. Oh, yeah.
9:12. Gilbert interview. And I still have that. I just can't delete it. I can't delete that reminder. It's like,
well, now you definitely can't. That's amazing.
But it's fun. So back to this movie, though. Okay. It makes sense because Dolomite, again, is also kind of a cultish movie, blaxploitation movie, Rudy Ray Moore, who he was and what he represented at the time. But this is even from a couple of generations before that, or a generation and a half before that, with Ed Wood, the Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bela Lugosi, his relationship to that character. I see why Tim Burton wanted to do this movie, but is this not the craziest zag for a director? Like I'm saying, Tim Burton, when you look at his run, because we like to do this. 85 is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Then he does Beetlejuice. Then he does Batman. Then he does Edward Scissorhands. Then Batman Returns. Okay, that's all in a 7-year stretch. He's throwing 99 every time.
Oh, yeah.
Every time. There's no miss. There's no box office bomb. There's no, I don't know about that one. And then you also mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas.
The Night Before Christmas, yeah.
Which
he did not direct, but it's his creation.
So he's throwing 99 like every single time, and there's no signs of needing to take him out. He's going to pitch the full 9 innings. This guy's got it. So Ed Wood is an interesting, what I feel is a zag, because it's like you have these huge, commercially successful, but also dark movies. They're all dark. They're Tim Burton-esque. He's got an aesthetic, but they still have this great commercial appeal. And then you go with Ed Wood, which has to be a passion project, I guess would be the way to describe it. And I can understand why someone like Tim Burton would be like, oh, let's make a movie about the worst director of all time who made the worst movie of all time. It's such a him thing to do. And then to cast Johnny Depp in this role. Where Johnny, I think, is just now starting to be this is the future guy, right? Because he's done, at this point, he's done Platoon, Edward Scissorhands.
Right.
He did, there was another big one.
Benny and June.
Benny and June, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He did. So he's getting ready to make the big run.
He's not 21 Jump Street.
He's not 21 Jump Street. He's kind of shed that image. This is like heartthrob image too. Like very popular with the ladies. Women are loving Johnny Depp. And you could tell, you can always earmark the guys who are about to be the guy. Do you know what I mean? In wrestling terms, whoever has the Intercontinental Championship is going to be the world champion next. We just got to let him find it. And so this is Johnny about to be the guy. Because after this movie, he goes on Don Juan DeMarco. He does Donnie Brasco, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is also kind of a strange movie. But then again, Sleepy Hollow. And then he's starting to really go with Blow, From Hell, and then bam, Pirates of the Caribbean. Right? So he's about to go on this huge run ahead of him. Yeah. This movie could have killed that for him.
This is definitely one of those movies where Ed Wood is not a heartthrob character at all. There's nothing, well, maybe for some, but there's nothing like, I mean, you can't help it. It's Johnny Depp. Everybody, it's kind of like when Brad Pitt plays a nerd. Like, okay, you're still
sure. Yeah, you're still like a movie star.
This is kind of when Charlize Theron puts a fake nose on or tries to look ugly. This is their thing. Like, okay, I don't want to be the 21 Jump Street anymore. So it's continuing that kind of Edward Scissorhands playing a weirdo, and then this is just that typical Tim Burton. This is only the second movie he did with Tim Burton. Then they became
synonymous with each other in some ways.
Then away we go. But this is it's one of those outsider stories that Tim Burton likes, where it's somebody that society doesn't necessarily see the value in, so they have like their own little group. I mean, you could say Batman is the outsider. Edward Scissorhands is definitely the outsider. Pee-wee is the outsider. And then, he would continue to do that for sure back when Tim Burton was good.
And Pee-wee was an outsider. But one thing before I forget this, because yes, those are all outsiders in their own movies and realms. Ed Wood, he is an outsider, but kind of not really, right? Because everyone's going along with the craziness. Everyone's like, it's a Hollywood movie. This is not a movie about a singular outsider, but a group of outsiders who find themselves, like they see themselves in each other in some weird way. Even from Bill Murray's character, who's Bunny, who's kind of a confidant also of Ed Wood a lot. Bunny, I've got the next one, and he's always kind of talking to him. To even Sarah Jessica Parker's character, who she wants to be involved in it until she can't take anymore. Patricia Arquette's character is an outsider. Bella is an outsider. The guy who plays what's the mystic's name?
Criswell.
Criswell is an outsider. Like these are all outsiders who find themselves kind of all wanting to be the same thing, which is to be remembered and to do it so through movie and to impact people through film and be something bigger than themselves. That's different, I think, than the individual outsiders that we saw before this.
That's true. He's definitely kind of a collector of them in this. And I wish I had written it down, because it's a good line that Sarah Jessica Parker has when she gets to the set of Bride of the Atom, which becomes Bride of the Monster. She says something like, I see the group of, this is not accurate, but I see the group of misfits and dope fiends have made it, because it's the gang. It's which one of them gave you money for the movie. It's just, it's this collection of outsiders, and Ed Wood is the glue, and he's the one that I guess can talk his way into convincing them all that at the very beginning of the movie, after they've done a play about World War II, they get a terrible review in the paper, and he dismisses it and tells them all, we're all doing great work. And they buy it.
He's definitely a glass half full guy, and I appreciate that about him phenomenally. And again, I think that with any great for any famous or infamous, right, they have the thought in their mind that what they were doing was, great. Right. Like strong belief in themselves is what I was looking for. Just a strong belief that, hey, no, like I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to keep making. It's like the scene where they show the executive, I think at Warner Brothers, Glenn or Glenda, and he thinks it's a practical joke, and then Ed Wood calls him, and he's like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, and Ed Wood's reaction is, I'll just do better next time. My
next one will be better.
My next one will be better. And there's just a never say die attitude in this guy, which is great. Now, we are 20 minutes in, and we haven't talked about Martin Landau, and we're going to get there in just a moment.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
But I want to say this about Johnny Depp, where I did like the movie. I really, really loved this movie. I was already recommending it to people, like texting people, hey, have you ever seen Ed Wood? If you haven't, go check this out. Here's the trailer. Here's a link. I don't know if I love Johnny Depp's performance. I don't know. Now, I want to walk this through with you, because I'm a tale of two minds on it. I have an idea of what he might have been doing, and if so, I actually love the performance. But if it's not what he was doing, then I just think it's okay. So,
what do you think he was doing?
Okay, I think that maybe he was playing Ed Wood in the way that a character in an Ed Wood movie would play Ed Wood.
Okay. You could say that for a couple of the people because some of them in their delivery, I think Patricia Arquette has moments like this. I think Sarah Jessica Parker has moments like this where they are a little clunky with some of the dialogue. So I think that can be dismissed because of that very thing. Johnny Depp has said that his portrayal of Ed Wood is a mix of the optimism of Ronald Reagan, the speaking voice of Casey Kasem, and kind of the just, again, more of the optimism and mannerisms of the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. Those are the three things he combined to do Ed Wood. I also think, yeah, those are all good. And I don't know what genius decides, okay, those three. But I also think, I wonder if he's playing Ed Wood how he, as a character, thinks he is, because he doesn't let anything bother him. And we know, if you do a deep dive, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point, the real Ed Wood was not as happy-go-lucky as appeared in the movie, but definitely had that optimism. And I can see how if you don't like the performance, it's because it's just so cheese.
Well, to me, it's not so much the cheese. It has some connective tissue and DNA to Johnny Depp's performance in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay.
I see, I'm like, oh, is this just how Johnny Depp plays weird, eccentric?
Yeah.
Like, who's not a pirate?
Yeah.
And because it's different than Edward Scissorhands, it's different than Jack Sparrow. But have you seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that.
And there's like a weird kind of talking through the bottom of my teeth, and like this, that I don't know if I fully loved. But once I kind of just got past it in the early going, I was like, oh, okay, I just thought that maybe he was doing, maybe he was acting poorly on purpose.
I don't know.
Like, was that a choice? Like, I don't want to be this phenomenal actor in a movie about the worst director
movie.
It was like, I was like, is he going for a meta thing?
That's interesting. And I will say this, having seen Ed Wood before Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, now that you mentioned that, I forgot about it because I saw Charlie and the Chocolate Factory once, and
that's
enough.
Good call.
But not for me. But it felt like his performance, and I remember reading at the time that he kind of did the same approach to his Willy Wonka, where it's a mix of some other real life people and Michael Jackson. A lot of Michael Jackson in his Willy Wonka. And I remember when I heard him do the voice as a fan of Ed Wood, I thought, oh, it's kind of a poor man's version of Ed Wood.
Interesting.
But if you've seen the other way around, then you go, oh, it's kind of like his Willy Wonka. But
yeah. I mean, that's what that was what I was thinking the whole time, because even like the facials that he would make and the little head movements and the talking to the bottom of the teeth, and the weird kind of way of his dialogue. I'm not saying that it wasn't good, but when you have Martin Landau,
ooh, yeah, let's go.
I mean, just crushing.
Academy Award winning for this performance.
So what's interesting is I'm watching the movie. Again, I did no research before. I didn't want to read about it. I didn't want to know who was in the cast. I didn't want to know anything. I just wanted to go in blind. I'm watching Martin Landau, and as a fan of film, I'm of course aware of Bela Lugosi. Even if you don't know him by name, you know him by voice and action, and you go, I want to suck your blood. Like everybody knows.
I never drink wine.
Right, right. You know this guy. And so I'm watching it, and I didn't know it was Martin Landau at first. And then I got about, I don't know, maybe it was after they first meet, and I think they go to Bella's house. And I'm like, oh, that's Martin Landau, And for me, the pro wrestling fan in me, I know him from Ready to Rumble. Is my first time I saw. Have you seen Ready to Rumble?
Long time
ago.
Yes.
David Arquette vehicle, Scott Conn.
Yeah.
Martin Landau plays a guy. Sal Mandini. Want to wrestle? But just, if you're a wrestling fan, Booker's in the movie too. Booker T and Martin Landau are in the same movie. Okay? So I just want to throw that.
3 degrees away.
I'm 3 degrees away from Martin Landau, who passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. But I'm watching him play Bela Lugosi, and as the movie plays out, I go, if this guy wasn't nominated, this is crazy. I was like, he had to have been nominated because he's doing such a great job. And I honestly thought maybe the fact that it's a weird, obscure movie, like, because even in the early 90s, there were still like big movies getting nominated for Academy Awards. It wasn't like Best Picture was 10 movies you had never heard of before.
Right.
It was like, oh,
well,
wow.
This is 94. This is the year Forrest Gump, the biggest movie of the year, was Best Picture.
Was Best Picture. And this is, when Pulp Fiction and all that was also nominated and things of that nature. So big stars, big movies were still getting the big nominations. So I thought, okay, hopefully he at least got a nom or a nod for this one. And then I was pleasantly surprised to find out that he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Yeah. One of 2 Oscars I think the movie was nominated for, or won. I know it won 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was nominated for any more than that, but it won 2. And it makes sense that he won for Bela Lugosi. And this is where the part of the movie that I really connected probably more with Ed Wood than any other point, because I have a Johnny Carson picture behind me. I'm a fan of the generation that preceded me to an unusual degree for someone of my age. For someone my age to know who George Gobel is a weird thing, right? And so it's you're even going like, who the hell is that? I have an affinity and a love for those people of that generation, that ilk. Like when Ed McMahon's estate went for sale, like I'm bidding on stuff from Ed McMahon's house. And I have here somewhere in my office. And to see the love that he has for Bela Lugosi, when everybody's like, oh, didn't he die? Isn't he like gone? What are you talking about? No, I met Bela Lugosi. This is the greatest day ever. And I felt him on that, because when I meet these stars that my friends maybe have never heard of, or I interview them, or I get an email from someone, I'm like, wow, I just talked to such and such on the phone. It's crazy. And they're like, who is that? I don't know who that is. But I have such a love for the legend that was, that it's still in me. And that's what Ed Wood had for Bela Lugosi. And he both was infatuated with him from what he represented for early Hollywood and being a star. Also probably being blinded by the fact of, wow, I met this great star of yesteryear and maybe I can convince him to be in one of my movies, which was a selfish thing. But also, it turns out that it was selfless the entire time in a lot of ways, because he just loved this man so much, had such a reverence for what he meant to film history. He wanted to be the guy, almost the Tarantino to the John Travolta before that was even a thing. Like, I want to be the guy who brings Bela Lugosi back to the big time. And he had an unwavering relationship with this guy who was like, to the death, I am going to make sure that I put Bela Lugosi back in the spotlight, even to the fact of I'm still going to shoot scenes for a movie that I don't even have yet. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to film this. And to me, that aspect of it, where he films of Bela just being in front of the house and grabbing the flower and being at a funeral or whatever. I don't know what this is going to be, but when he gets the idea or he gets the financing for the next movie, I'm going to figure out how to put Bela in this movie. God, I love that, man. I love Martin Landau in it.
Well, it became his stock footage, which he already was good at using. There's a scene early in Ed Wood where he sees a bunch of stock footage that has been collected at the studios working at, and it's shots of missiles being fired and buffalo running on a plane and an octopus underwater, and he makes a movie out of that. And then the Bela Lugosi footage that he shot, which was just, in the movie at least, is done to make Bela Lugosi feel better after getting out of rehab that they're working on a movie together. And then you can decide later if putting all that into Plan 9 from Outer Space is exploitive. But then deciding, okay, I'm going to make a movie out of this, and all I need is a guy that kind of resembles him to cover his face for the entire movie, and no one will notice, and I'll keep reusing the same 3 shots. You need to see Plan 9.
Oh, I started watching it last night. I fell asleep.
Okay, good.
I started watching it late, but I started watching it. Yeah.
It's more interesting now to watch it and go, oh, wow, they weren't exaggerating this part at all.
Well, I almost find it to be completely nonsensical when I'm watching it. Like I'm trying to follow the plot, and I'm having trouble.
Oh, don't do that. Yeah, well, they mentioned it when the making of, like, how can the police drive up during the day and now they're in the cemetery and it's night? That happens a lot in Plan 9 from Outer Space, where it's just day for night. But movies are not about the big picture, or not. They're about the big picture. They're not about the
small
little
details or whatever. Oh, which I love that line. Now, going back to the stock footage part, is they show him, and it's, I don't know the actor's name, but he's always, "You're my boy Blue"
He's
to
always
me.
the old man. Yeah.
"You're my boy Blue." You know, he's always the old guy.
He's in The Wedding Singer, I think, where he says, "I'm sorry, I used to be much stronger."
Oh yeah, he's just that. He was that guy in the 90s.
The bad guy.
And I was referencing Old School.
Oh, I think he's in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I think he is in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
He's on the train.
He is.
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton liked this guy. But when he's the one showing him the stock footage, right? And I guess Ed Wood at the time, is he just working on the lot, like as a stagehand or a gardener?
He's delivering a plant.
Plant, yeah, okay, something. But when he shows them the underwater footage of the octopus, and Ed Wood starts going, "Oh, this is what I would do with the movie," and he lays it out, and then the guy's like, "You didn't even use the octopus." He goes, "No, I'm saving that for my big underwater climax." You know, I was like, this is my guy. I understood him. I don't, like I said earlier, and it's not any kind of a lack of trying to understand. The cross-dressing, I still am like, I don't really get it as far as like the point of, I guess it's a part of his story, but I don't, maybe Glenn or Glenda, I just don't know why you put that in the movie so much, or why so much attention's paid to it. I guess to show that he's some kind of strange guy. In the same sense of like in J. Edgar, when they play to the cross-dressing, like I do understand that it's an odd fact about this well-known person. I just don't understand how it weaves into the story.
Yeah, I think if it was not about a real-life person, it probably wouldn't be a thing.
You would be like, why would you put this in here? Yeah.
Right. And it would have to be explained at great detail. And I have watched this movie with people that don't know anything about it. And they go, "Why is that?" And I go, "Because he did." I don't know. That's just, that's what he did. Yeah. It made him feel comfortable.
Yeah. But going to the love of Bela, you understood Ed Wood's love for him, right? You resonate with that, being that like, even Whodunit, the Clue documentary, in some ways is a similar love affair.
Well, I was thinking about what you were saying, how you, to even greater extent, but we both have had the opportunity to sit down with people that maybe in the normal, quote unquote, normal world are people that you just walk by every day, but we appreciate their accomplishments or appreciate what their creativity has meant to us growing up. And it's why, people get starstruck, or why people go to conventions and will wait in line to meet one of the guys that played Michael Myers that nobody would know. And it's a guy that wore a mask, and it might be him. Sure. We never see his face in the actual movie, but we know it's him. So we have that appreciation. So yes, I totally get being more starstruck meeting somebody like Jeffrey Kramer, who was in Jaws and played the motorist in Clue, that, no offense to Jeffrey Kramer, but probably can go most day to day without somebody going, "I love you," in a way that if it were Johnny Depp walking around, maybe more people would be super excited, or however people are reacting to Johnny Depp these days.
No, totally. And I just think that it's I'm trying to think of like a good example of like today, of like who that would be for, the year prior. I don't know who that would be. Maybe like I don't know. I want to say like a Henry Winkler, but even Henry Winkler's like, Bela Lugosi was a huge star, but I'm trying to think Henry Winkler's still doing it though. Like he's still out there and doing it at a high level. I'm just trying to think of like that person, who that would be.
I think anybody that just their time has faded a little bit. I think your example of Quentin Tarantino wanting John Travolta in Pulp Fiction is a perfect, it's not that modern of an example, but it's a very similar one where he definitely wanted him to play the lead in this movie. And the studio's like, "No, John Travolta's washed up. He does talking baby movies now." And he said, "No, it's definitely an equivalent. I don't know if anybody does that now. I think you would do that.
I would do it.
You would throw like a pro wrestler that maybe from the 80s. Like I remember I was writing a script years and years ago, and I was writing a part for a security guard. And I wrote it purposefully that it was a former wrestler that now is a security guard. And I wanted it to be Roddy Piper. So I thought, how cool would that be? And maybe some people would get it. Roddy Piper was pretty big because he also did They Live. But you know what I mean? Like, I would have also been happy if it had been Coco Beware, or if it had been, you know, somebody from that era, Brutus Beefcake. And so yeah, I think everybody has that. It's a fandom that either is not huge or it's something that is from growing up. And to that point, Ed Wood says in the movie that Dracula is the first movie he ever saw.
Right.
So he has that childhood attachment to Bela Lugosi.
And you know what? And this probably isn't, you know, fair to Bela Lugosi because of his star power. Because Bela Lugosi was a household name. Like after I watched this movie, I was talking to my dad, who you know, was born in the 40s, and so I go, hey, do you know Bela Lugosi? He's like, I love Bela Lugosi. He's one of my favorites of all time. I'm like, what about Boris Karloff? He's like, oh, I love Boris more than Bela. I'm like, that's what this movie's about. Wait, hold on. Have you ever seen Ed Wood? But like, I remember distinctly, it was 2012. I just started with the wrestling show. And obviously meeting Booker T was a huge deal, but I remember they brought in this guy named Hardcore Holly. And this is not a wrestler you're going to be familiar with. But Hardcore Holly was, you know, at first he was Thurman Plug, a.k.a. Sparky. In WWF, Sparky Plug, who was a race car driver, and
Jobber.
No. Well, no, okay. You know, sorta. I think he started as an enhancement guy.
A Brooklyn Brawler kind of vibe to it.
Sorta. But then he elevated to, you know, Bob Holly, and then he became Hardcore Holly in the late 90s. And I thought Hardcore Holly was the coolest guy. He's from Alabama. He'd use the Alabama Slam or whatever. And so we brought him in for a show. And this is the first guy outside of Booker who was brought in for a show, like who was a name guy from the WWF when I watched it. And I remember like sneaking a picture of that he was sitting talking to Booker and texting my friends, dude, Hardcore Holly is here. And everyone was like, who's that? And I'm like, it's Hardcore Holly. How do you not know Hardcore Holly? And that's kind of the same reverence in some ways that Ed Wood had. So, but Martin Landau, to capture the accent, the Hungarian accent, I actually listened to a interview of Landau talking about the performance. And the interesting thing that he said was, I wasn't trying to do a Hungarian accent like full out. I was trying to do it the way that Bela did, where he was almost shameful of his Hungarian accent and thought that it hindered him from getting bigger roles. So he would constantly try to disguise unsuccessfully his Hungarian accent. So Martin Landau's approach was, I'm going to learn the accent, and then while doing the line delivery as Bela, try to hide the Hungarian accent at the same time in order to really achieve what Bela Lugosi did in his performances. And to think of that. And Landau was like, I was paying attention to where my tongue was placed in my mouth when I would say certain words and try to suppress it. I was like, that's why you win an Oscar.
I was going to say, give that man an Oscar.
That's why you win an Oscar.
Who does that?
You know, but then even Rick Baker, who we should talk about, the monster man of all monster men.
The other Academy Award
winner for Best Makeup, because Bela Lugosi and Martin Landau look nothing alike. Like, there's not a connective tissue, in my opinion, to those two guys, other than being older and white.
Yeah.
You know?
So it could have been me.
It could have been Jeff. And
it could have been me. I'm Bela Lugosi.
Rick Baker, from what I understand, heard this movie was being made and was such a fan of Bela Lugosi and Dracula, he wrote a letter to Tim Burton saying, I will do this for free. Like, I feel like I need to do this. It's a calling for me to make sure this is done right. And I'm sure, I don't know if he did it for free, but I'm sure as hell I'm sure he's glad he wrote that letter and got the Oscar for it.
Yeah. Well, it's very Ed Wood in that way, that it's a passionate reason. It's not a financial reason. It's the passion of it. And and it paid off.
Oh, boy, did it pay off.
Yeah. And it's so good because I love it when a movie like this and the makeup in a movie like this is what wins, because it's not showy. It's not a monster movie. How do you get your friends to be baptized to make a monster movie? We got to talk about Bill Murray in a second, but yeah, I love that that's pretty much it. The makeup is all Bela.
The makeup is phenomenal, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the cast, which is like this also shows you where Tim Burton was at this time, to where it's like I think this is now people want to be in a Tim Burton movie.
Yes,
right. I mean, that's what this cast
Batman
screams.
helps.
Batman helps, and
For sure.
having Jack helps.
Yeah, Bill Murray was not doing supporting parts yet. This may be the first one. Before he started doing like the supporting parts of Wes Anderson movies or things like that, he was doing still Groundhog Day. He was still the lead in comedies. So that was another cool thing I remember seeing this movie growing up, is that, oh my gosh, and Bill Murray's in it. And you could tell Bill Murray's ad-libbing and having fun. And he's just playing this small part that is hilarious and weird. And he's in and he's out. And then as a fan of Plan 9 to see, oh, he's playing the guy that actually says that's the name of the movie that says Plan 9 and Plan 9. Ah, yes, Plan 9.
Yeah, I think Bill at this run, you know what? I actually like to look at his filmography. I love looking at runs. I don't know if you ever do that, but that's like that must be a wrestling thing maybe too. Because by the way, we're going to talk about wrestling here more in a second, but let's go Bill Murray. This is Bill Murray's run leading up to Ed Wood. I'm going to go 10 years. Okay. We're going to go Ghostbusters. Nothing Lasts Forever.
Big break. Okay. Long break.
Yeah. The Razor's Edge. Okay.
After Razor's Edge. Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors. All right. Part. I like it. She's Having a Baby. I don't even remember him in that movie.
That's in the end credits. There's a montage at the end.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't remember him in that movie. Scrooged is great.
The Scrooge was the big comeback, 88.
Ghostbusters 2.
Yes.
Which I like, but you cannot like
I
it.
know.
That's fine.
This is where I know.
Quick Change.
It's fine.
I don't remember.
I like Quick Change.
I don't remember Quick Change. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh.
What About Bob? Great.
I love What About Bob.
Then here we go. Groundhog Day. Big Groundhog Day.
Huge.
Mad Dog and Glory. Modest hit.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a hit. I remember that one was shelved for a long time. That was like that's now we were starting to get to my era where I was paying attention to movies and releases and stuff. This is still like the days of reading Premiere magazine and stuff like that to get your information because it's still pre-internet. But Mad Dog and Glory was
that's him and De Niro, right? That's him and De Niro and Thurman. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that movie.
And he kind of plays the mobster, Bill Murray.
I know
it's good. It just I remember it was supposed to come out, and then it may have been sitting on a shelf for a year or something like that.
Well, he goes from acting alongside Robert De Niro to Ed Wood. And then we go Kingpin after that, which is good. Space Jam in 96, which is good. For me, at least. Then there's some interesting choices after that. I'm trying to think of Rushmore, which was filmed at my high school, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
Charlie's Angels, Osmosis Jones, Royal Tenenbaums, Lost in Translation. You know what? He's had a more scattered filmography than I thought.
Those are now after, I guess you can count Little Shop of Horrors, but that was really a small part. Now after Ed Wood, it seems like he is doing, because even Kingpin, he's third banana, I would say, to Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid. And he's just got a really good supporting character. He still then would throw in movies like The Man Who Knew Too Little and
Man Who Knew Too Little's fun.
Yeah, they're fine. Those were not hits.
No, I watched Man Who Knew Too Little the other night.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I should watch that again.
It's fun.
I remember liking it because as a Hitchcock fan, I liked the title.
Yeah. It reminds me in some ways of, although it's very different, but it reminds me of Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. I don't know why.
Okay.
For some reason, there's a connective tissue in those movies for me. But Bill Murray, he's good in this movie. Like, he's really good in this movie as Bunny. And again, a weirdo. This Bunny guy's a weirdo. I don't know anything about him other than what's in this movie, but apparently
I don't either. He's just a talker. He talks about getting a sex change and then he doesn't.
Right.
So he's just kind of an all talk kind of guy, which is a nice balance to Ed Wood, who could be an all talk guy, but he delivers poorly, but he delivers. There are a lot of people I know, even in my life, that they'll say, "Oh, I'm a writer. I write scripts." "Oh, what have you written?" "Well, I haven't written anything, but I have a lot of ideas." "Okay, well, that's good." But they don't have the sex change.
Well,
to mix my metaphors.
Here's some interesting things on him.
Bunny?
Yeah, John Cabell Breckenridge, also known as Bunny Breckenridge, was an American actor and drag queen, best known for his role as the ruler in Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space, his only film appearance. Okay, I thought he was like an actor. He was the great-great-great-grandchild of U.S. Attorney General John Breckenridge and the great-grandchild of both U.S. Vice President and Confederate General John C. Breckenridge and Wells Fargo bank founder Lloyd Tevis. So the Vice President, John C. Breckenridge, and then Confederate leader and general, I guess, Lloyd Tevis, who also founded Wells Fargo. So this guy's got some background to him. What is going on here? Breckenridge.
What's going on, Bunny?
Interesting. So he was openly gay at a time where it was daring and even dangerous, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
He had a flamboyant lifestyle, an outrageous sense of humor, and a penchant for perfume and costume jewelry, often being in Shakespearean plays in England and San Francisco in the 1920s, where he also frequently performed in drag. Shortly after shooting Plan 9 from Outer Space, Breckenridge was convicted on 10 counts of sex perversion for taking underage boys on excursion to Las Vegas. He was committed to the Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane and released the following year. Upon his release, he returned to his Spanish-style home in San Francisco, which was adorned with gold frames and photos of many celebrities that he had met and befriended, including Princess Margaret, Noel Coward, J. Edgar Hoover, Elvis Presley, and Ed Sullivan. Interesting. What an odd cat. His nickname was Bunny. Go figure.
He was Bunny.
Okay, one more casting I want to talk about, and then we can jump into some categories. You already know where I'm going with it. How was there a movie starring Johnny Depp?
I'm amazed. Yeah.
Directed by Tim Burton, with Bill Murray,
and
that had pro wrestling in it. George the Animal Steele.
The Animal Steele. One of my favorites growing up.
So George the Animal Steele was so good in wrestling, just as an over-the-top character.
LJN action figure.
Great LJN action figure. The green tongue would eat the turnbuckle, the hairy back, of course. Everybody knew George the Animal Steele from wrestling in the 1980s. He was just kind of this iconic figure in some ways. And the fact that this part was just perfect for him. How could he be?
He looks like him.
It looks identical. And this guy, Tor, was a real Swedish pro wrestler from the 1930s. And they look identical.
Had you heard of Tor Johnson as a wrestler before this?
No.
Okay.
No, that's probably in like pro wrestling officially started like the late 1890s. Even though there was some stuff before that with like Ed Strangler Lewis and Frank Gotch and guys like that. They even say Abraham Lincoln was a pro wrestler in the 1840s or something like that, 1850s. Okay. But there's a whole period of wrestling that I think is just really lost on people before it came.
When was Gorgeous George?
Gorgeous George is like 50s.
Because that's when, that's the first. Most people, I think, when they go back, if they know any kind of pro wrestling history, that's
where it starts.
First name.
Yeah, Gorgeous George in the Gilmore Gardens, which became Madison Square Garden later. A little factoid for you there. But yeah, that's where it started. And that's where Muhammad Ali started to get obsessed with pro wrestling, and he, kind of modeled himself after Gorgeous George and what he would say and do.
With the trash talk kind of stuff?
The trash talk and the flamboyancy and
the rhyming and the
rhyming, and also saying like, oh, these people are paying money to see this guy get beat up. Like, I could do that. It's a part of the show. And then I think in the last
that makes sense.
10 or 15 years, every politician figured out what pro wrestling was. But anyway, George the Animal Steele is so great in this movie. Like, he's so good in it.
I didn't know he could talk.
You never heard him talk
Because
before.
watching wrestling, he would just yell for Elizabeth.
What a
'cause
voice.
He was in love with Macho Man Randy Savage's manager.
As is most people.
That was the big arc for me and my youth. And so hearing him talk, he doesn't say a lot, but he's great.
What a voice. Like, what a voice.
He has a good scene, a good improv scene with Bill Murray, too, going back to that.
That was improv, you
Mr.
think?
Breckenridge, what wrong? I heard you were becoming a lady. Yeah, I think when they're in the when they're having the scene in the meat packing
Yes.
the
party, right?
And the mariachi band is there playing, and Bill Murray tells the story of going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Was a nightmare. I do think that feels very Bill Murray, and they just kind of let him do it because it has nothing to do with the movie. It's just the movie takes a break. And I think even if you go on YouTube and look for deleted scenes, that goes on longer.
Does it really? Okay.
Bill Murray talking about that. Yeah, because you get a glimpse of it when they show in true biopic form. They show the images of people at the end before the credits and say, "Where are they now?" He has a clip where you see him watching the mariachi band walk by him, and that's from that scene.
So this appearance from George Steele and the fact that there's actually a pro wrestling scene in the movie, which I'm always like a fan of. And like, I'm starting to have this encyclopedic knowledge of every time there's a pro wrestling scene in a movie or a television show, like more and more as the years go by. But this one, I don't know how it was never on my radar. And I even asked the director of Reality Wrestling, have you ever heard of this movie where George Animal Steele plays a big role? And he's like, I've never heard of this movie. So for some reason, it didn't touch the wrestling culture. I don't know why it never crossed over and we really were aware of it. But
we are doing good work here for pro wrestling. We're bringing Ed Wood. And
well,
George
like for it to
Steele.
be an Academy Award winning film, I mean, for its makeup.
Directed by Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, like I said, and we had had not touched the wrestling bubble. It was very interesting to me. Should we get into some of our categories or do you have anything else you want to make mention of?
I think it was wise. I will mention by not mentioning Jeffrey Jones is in this movie. Who, you know,
I mean, look, he's got
things.
some stuff, but I will say he's good in the movie.
It's very good.
Yeah,
and
he's good in the movie.
I think the Ed Wood using the same people in his movies can be seen in the Tim Burton style. This was the second movie that Jeffrey Jones was in after Beetlejuice. And then he was in Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm. As with
and
Johnny
then
Depp.
he was and then he was kind of in Beetlejuice,
sorta
in claymation form,
sorta.
Actually, he was in Beetlejuice a lot more than I expected him to be in.
Yeah, and I have thoughts on that too. I have thoughts.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. Like,
Well, I think that was a bit of a Tim Burton flipping the bird situation. Like,
right?
you're saying I can't put him in this movie? You're saying I can't do it? Guess what?
But he's the whole reason. It's kind of like that's how I felt about Attack of the Clones when Jar Jar Binks was basically taken out of Phantom Menace, and George Lucas, who loved, I guess, Jeffrey Jones is Tim Burton's Jar Jar Binks. He said, okay, fine. Jar Jar Binks will be in the movie. But his dumb little scene where he makes a mistake is the whole reason your precious 4 through 6 movies happen. He creates the empire, suckers. So yeah, Jeffrey Jones claymation and shark victim in Beetlejuice feels that way.
But it also seems like Tim Burton's spirit in some ways of like, oh, I can't do this. You're saying I can't do this?
Watch.
Oh, I'm gonna make a movie in black and white with Johnny Depp about the worst director of all time. You know,
while he's doing, going back to what you're talking about, while he's in the middle of Batman and Batman Returns,
and about to start development on Superman Lives, because Superman Lives would have been the next movie.
Yeah. Before we go, also, this is what's rare about this movie. Speaking of people that Tim Burton collaborates with a lot, no Danny Elfman score in Ed Wood. The score in this one, it's the only one, is by Howard Shore, who did Silence of the Lambs before this, and then would go on to do Lord of the Rings. And the story is, during Batman Returns, which Danny Elfman did the score for, they had a little bit of a falling out, and Howard Shore came on to do some additional music for Batman Returns. And then they really had, Danny Elfman and Tim Burton really had a conflict, I guess, on Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, right. Yes.
Where Danny Elfman had a lot to do with that because he's also the singing voice of Jack Skellington,
Jack Skellington,
and wrote the songs and the score. And their disagreement, I guess, on whatever happened during that made Howard Shore come in to do the score for Ed Wood. And then after that, they have reconciled, and now it's all Danny Elfman all the time. But it is a rare Tim Burton movie that's the only one that doesn't have a Danny Elfman score. That being said, score is great.
Score is great.
Shore did a score, and it's very catchy, and you get to hear it a lot because the opening credits are long, and you get to hear the whole groovy Ed Wood theme.
Question.
The opening credits. Yeah.
Plan 9 from Outer Space got more recognition and attention from this movie or from the mention in the Chinese restaurant episode of Seinfeld? Because I have a theory, and I'm probably right on this. Not even a theory. I'm 100% right on this. The Chinese restaurant has been viewed more times than the movie Ed Wood. For sure.
True.
For sure.
But I agree, but do people pay it any mind other than it's just a funny title?
I don't know. That's my question. So what do you think did more for the movie?
I think more people would want to at least look up Plan 9 from Outer Space after watching Ed Wood.
Okay.
And not look it up like Prognosis Negative after
That's fair.
Seinfeld. Although I would love to watch Rochelle.
Oh, I'm still waiting on Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
Young Girl's Journey. Erotic Journey from Milan to Minsk.
Rochelle.
Okay, so we're going to break down some of our categories. Are you ready to do this, Jeff? Do you have your categories ready?
Yes.
So our first category is the scene stealer, the favorite character or performance from the movie. It's kind of hard to not say Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi.
Landau.
Yeah.
Yep. It's got to be. Bill Murray's great. But
I think everyone's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked everyone's performance.
I really like I forget his name, but he's the guy that you talked about at Warner Brothers that he has the meeting with.
Oh yeah,
he brings in Glenn and Glinda, and he's done a bunch of stuff too. And I like just his kind of smug attitude when he says, "You're the first person that gets to see my talents." Thank you. And even when he leaves, calls him Mr. Ward.
Mr. Ward.
I'll take a look at your little opus, and maybe we could do some business together.
Calling it a little opus was hilarious. But also, what I thought was fun about that whole run where Ed's trying to get the first movie made, Glenn or Glinda, is like, wow, was it that easy to get a movie made back in the day? Like you just convinced some B
that
movie
actor too.
Yeah, he was good.
Screen Classics.
Mm-hmm.
He's great too.
He's really good in the movie. Like I said, there's no like bad performance.
But it's, Martin Landau.
But it's Martin Landau by far as Bela Lugosi. Even like there's some scenes in there that we'll talk about because they're in my thing. But definitely Bela Lugosi, Martin Landau. It's the reason why he won the Oscar for it. Big moment. The favorite or most impactful scene in the movie. What do you got for this one?
Well, for me, it's two because I'm going to cheat. I love the premieres. I love the premiere of Bride of the Monster where all hell breaks loose for no reason, really. Just
what's the reason for that? I had that written down.
Idea.
Why are they so mad?
They're all insane, and they SA poor Vampira, and people steal their tires from their hearse. I don't know why they're so rowdy. Edwin has a couple of those moments where it's just it's true. I don't think it's based on reality though. And the other premiere is Plan 9 from Outer Space at the Pantages Theater, and I can tell you right now there is no way this movie had a premiere that grand with that many people in the audience, that many people applauding Ed Wood's name when it comes up in the credits. That is pure fiction for a very nice ending of the movie, but no way. I don't know if it even got a huge theatrical release at all.
Do you know what's interesting about that scene is I actually had a thought on it while watching it because I was like, man, why are there all these people here for this strange movie, this, that, and the third? I thought it was a delusion of his mind.
It's Big Fish.
Yeah, I thought it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I think it was just in his head because there's the close-up of Johnny Depp like reciting the lines from the movie, right? And the camera's real tight on him the whole time. And I think in his mind, he is seeing his little opus and this huge
in front of
the validation that he finally wanted, this great movie, this huge movie in front of a huge premiere, in front of an audience that adores him and loves him. Without Edward R. Wood Jr., this would never have happened. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Edward R. Wood Jr.
Gets to run down the aisle and he says this, he gives Bella, this is for Bella, and everybody applauds.
This happened in his head.
I think you're right.
He imagined this moment.
It didn't happen in real life.
It didn't happen in real life, but this happened in his head, which is part of one of, I think, the most cinematic moments of the movie is there at the end. And it's one of my favorite parts of the scene stealing as we're talking about it. There's two scenes that I have too. I cheated. One of them is at the end of the premiere when after the movie's over, he and Patricia Arquette's character go out to the car and he's trying to tell her, like, let's get married. Let's go to Vegas. And he opens the car door and all the water spills out from the car. And then they get in and there's the kind of tracking shot where it goes up and you see that there's this miniature Hollywood set, that they're shooting on, which is like, again, which made me think this was like it's a model of Hollywood. And the camera pans off over that. I love that. But what I thought the most impactful scene is actually after Bela gets out of rehab, where he's the first celebrity to check into rehab. And I actually went and looked up the real photos. It really happened. That's the real story. He looks awful, actually, in the pictures when he was in rehab. And he gets out in the movie, and Johnny Depp, Ed Wood says, I'm so sorry you didn't get to see the film at the premiere. And he goes, oh, I've seen it in my head. I know this movie. It's in my heart. And he starts giving the lines from the movie. And then there's the little fans who come and get him his autograph. And he has this like final moment in the sun, quite literally. There's a moment in the sun where all is right in the world. And then he dies. I really...
what's interesting?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say two things about that based on what you said before. One, his best performance in the movie he gives in person. And there's a couple times in the movie where they say he's so much scarier in person than he is on the screen. So it's very interesting to see that he gives his final big performance, not on the screen, but it's in front of a small but appreciative crowd. Number two, to go to your theory that the Plan 9 premiere is in his head, interesting that Bela Lugosi says when he says, I'm sorry you didn't get to the premiere, and he goes, that's okay, I've seen it up here. So that kind of plants it in a weird way. And maybe we're creating things that don't exist. But I'd like to think where that's very logical that now Ed Wood has created a premiere in his head as well. But yes, that's his home. I have no home.
That's that one. Oh, yeah. But I thought it was actually like really well acted. I mean,
it's well acted and the dialogue is terrible.
Right.
So that is great. Hunted, despised, living like an animal.
It's over the top B movie, terrible, but he does it phenomenally in the movie, and I just love.
Give him an Oscar.
Give that man an Oscar. I love that scene.
Come on.
Okay, now here we go. Couple things here. Let's go to our prop shop. All right, yes. One item you'd like to own from the movie.
I thought about this. At first, I thought the octopus, but that would take up too much space. So I picked Ed's dentures. They are small. They're compact. Thank you.
Phenomenal.
They come out twice in the movie, and they could sit right on your desk, and you can look at the teeth because he lost his pearlies in the war.
Yeah. That was the scene where I guess it was Halloween. Yeah.
Those teeth don't scare me. What about these?
The real Dracula can't scare a kid on Halloween, which was so funny.
Yeah. You've seen it all.
Okay, man. Wow. Yeah. I too, I struggled a little bit with the prop shop on this one. I was like, what do I do? What I landed on is I'd want one of the flying saucers. The terrible flying saucers from Plan 9.
The paper plate flying saucers.
Yeah.
Well, that I guess it's weird that I forgot. So the company that I made the Who Done It, the Clue documentary with is called It Looks So Fake.
Yeah.
And the logo is a flying saucer with strings holding it up. And that is, I had forgotten. That's from Plan 9. And it's from Ed Wood, basically.
Look at that.
So that's a good one too. I'd forgotten how much that kind of entered my DNA.
Yeah.
That's what it's from. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I can't think of
I'd rather
anything
have
else.
that than the teeth now. I think I like yours better. Let's
No,
switch.
the teeth is good though. The teeth is good.
We'll
I
switch.
thought about the octopus as well. I thought about a coffin from Bela, which would be cool. I also thought about that whole
Gemstone.
miniature set of Hollywood,
Oh, yeah.
but I didn't know where I would put it.
Exactly. We're very practical in our prop shop, just in case it really happens. I think that's good.
All right, here we go. One-liner legend. Okay. What is your favorite singular point of dialogue?
It has already been said in this episode, but I will say it again because to me, it sums up the entire spirit and the entire character, Edward D. Wood Jr. It is when he is on the phone outside the physically outside the movie studio. And he says, really? Worst film we ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. And I think that's great. And I think that is a very admirable quality. It's funny because if you made Ed Wood and kept his personality in a different light, he could be a terrible villain.
Yeah.
Because he's delusional, because he brings people along, because he has no talent, and he's a good manipulator and a con artist, and he has no money and he gets money from other people. He's a terrible person. And it all depends on how you want to look at it. But I love worst film we ever saw. My next one will be better.
Great line. And I actually find that Ed Wood, at least from his characterization in the movie, has an extreme amount of talent, but maybe not for filmmaking, but for getting films made.
Yeah, he'd be a good producer.
So mine is early in the movie. It's after Ed meets Bela for the first time, and they're watching Dracula on the couch, which in some ways is heartbreaking. That Bella's like still clinging on to, his big moment in the sun. But in some ways it's also cathartic that he can still find love in his performance, and that Johnny or Ed Wood is getting to watch the first movie he's ever seen with the guy who starred in the movie that he's like kind of idolized. There's so many themes going on in this thing, but they shows the real Bela Lugosi from the performance, from at least that's what I thought when they're watching Dracula. Isn't that the real movie?
I think the movie's actually The Black Cat, but it's
okay. It
doesn't matter. But yes, it's really him, and he
does the thing with his fingers, right? And then Ed Wood goes, "How do you do that, Bella?" And he goes, "You must be double jointed, and you must be Hungarian."
Yes,
I don't know what that means, but that's the line.
I have no idea. I love that. And there are a couple other lines that when in my early 20s, a group of us that worked at the same place, we made like a crummy movie about people at a party, but we started filming it in the early 2000s. But my co-director and I, Drew, we would quote Ed Wood a lot. And one of the lines we would quote the most, we cannot say on a family-friendly podcast because it's a rated R movie, but it is after Bela is about to do the octopus scene. And he's not feeling well. He's in the car and he has to go shoot up, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
And then when he comes back, he says, "All right, let's shoot this."
Oh, yeah.
So we would say that a lot when we were about to do a scene. We would quote, or even when he goes, "BS, I'm ready now."
Yes.
Hold the camera.
Apparently, there was some like consternation with the Lugosi family after the movie came out, saying that Bela never swore in real life.
Yeah.
And also didn't have a hatred for my Frankenstein. Boris Karloff. He didn't have a hatred for him. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's the family, so I guess we have to take what they say.
I don't swear in front of my family either. So they would probably say the same thing. They have no idea.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I always say that there are friend words and there are church words, right? And your brain knows when to use them.
Yeah.
And
words.
Yeah. And so I think that could be true. This is a moment that I feel like you probably resonated with, because I did in the movie. It's when Ed finishes the script for Glenn or Glinda, and he's sitting with Sarah Jessica Parker, and he shows her, "I finished my script."
Yeah.
And then she goes like, "Oh, congratulations. I can't wait to take home and read it." And he goes, "No, why don't you read it now? And then tell me what you think. You can go sit in the bedroom."
Why don't you go in the next room?
I was like, "This is me. I've done this.
I've done that.
No, I can't wait for you to take it home. I can't wait for you to tell me the next day. Tell me now." I did it to you.
You did it to me. It's true. And I tried to respond as quick as possible because I know that feeling. Because I know the feeling where you take forever and put your heart and soul into something, and you're like, you can take an hour and read it. I did all the work for you.
Yeah.
Go read it. And for whatever reason, you give it to people that go, oh, yeah, I'll get to it. And then it takes weeks and weeks and weeks. You don't want to bother them. There's another movie that came out with Chevy Chase called Funny Farm. Have you seen?
I've seen Funny Farm. Yeah.
He does the same thing to his wife in that, where he writes the first few chapters of his novel, and they go to a hotel on their anniversary, and his present to her is the first 3 pages of his novel, and he makes her read it, and then she hates it. Spoiler for Funny Farm, people.
Spoiler.
But yes, yes, that's very funny. I think a lot of people that, again, there's a lot of things as a creative person that pours your heart and soul into something like that, and that makes you so vulnerable in that way that you can relate to, because a lot of people don't have to do that.
Yeah. I don't know if there's another, comparative you can give to somebody, like, to try to explain that through metaphor, like somebody who doesn't go through this journey of like pouring your heart and soul into something that you care so much about, but maybe no one else is going to care about, and then wanting to hear what they have to say about it. But that stuck out to me, and I knew that would stick out to you. Our next one here, Plot Hole Parade. Is there any plot holes in the movie? I don't really feel like it, right?
Not necessarily. It's just because it's a movie about a real person and what they chose to focus on. There's a lot of the real Ed Wood. Ed Wood, after Plan 9, Plan 9 was not a hit. Plan 9 didn't have a big premiere. He did make other movies, but they did not mention in the movie that he was a terrible alcoholic. And that's actually why the character that Sarah Jessica Parker played, she didn't leave him because he was a cross-dresser. She left him because he was an alcoholic. And his life actually got very sad at the end, and he and his wife Kathy, who's Patricia Arquette, she was also an alcoholic, and they both were kicked out of a lot of apartments, and he ended up making softcore pornography to make a living, and died in the 70s, I think, and in total obscurity, and not until people dubbed this as Plan 9 is the worst movie that he kind of got this new recognition that he didn't live to get to see. But so as far as plot holes, it's not a plot hole for the movie, but it's just they chose to focus. And I mentioned at the beginning, rose-colored glasses. It's definitely a very chipper way to tell his story, which you could also do it in a very sad way if you wanted to, but that's no fun.
There's I wanted to, this isn't like a plot hole inconsistency, but I just wonder if it really happened. Is there like a documentation of him actually meeting Orson Welles, or was that just convenient for the movie?
That did not happen.
Okay. I figured it didn't happen because it was such a movie feeling moment.
It's Wolfman Jack and American Graffiti. It's what's who did Dodgeball. It's Lance Armstrong.
Oh, Lance Armstrong.
There's always, you meet your hero and he gives you the great advice, and then you go on and do your thing.
Yeah. Now that was, and then when I was watching it, I did look this up, and it ended up being true, but like Orson Welles was Vincent D'Onofrio in the movie.
On screen, yes.
On screen, but his voice was not him.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually the guy, for those familiar with the cartoon Pinky and the Brain. The Brain character sounds a lot like Orson Welles. That's who they got to do the voice. So if you close your eyes during the Orson Welles scene and picture the Brain, that's basically the same voice.
Brain. Wow. That's crazy.
The Brain.
Did not know that.
Wonder how D'Onofrio felt about that. This is another movie we've tackled where a character got dubbed.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, we're talking about Leaving and Clue the movie.
Clue.
Yeah, I don't know how the dubbing, how that makes somebody feel. Like in Dr. No, Ursula Andress is dubbed completely, who plays Honey Rider. In Goldfinger, Goldfinger is completely dubbed.
Gert. Yeah.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. That is like not him saying that.
Didn't David Prowse, who played Darth Vader in The Suit, when he went to go see Star Wars, was not happy that's
what they say.
Suddenly James Earl Jones was the voice? Who knows? How could you not know that? Like, are we going to record my dialogue?
Like,
or
come
just
on,
using
bro.
it from the mouth for hello?
Yeah.
Nah.
He should have been a little bit wiser on that one.
Come on, David.
Let's see. We have more categories here. We're going to go for best shot fired, most visually stunning moment or scene in the movie. I mentioned I liked the water coming out of the car, just from a cinematic standpoint, but was there one that stuck out to you?
It's a beautiful movie.
It is a beautiful
black
movie.
and white is fantastic. Everything looks really good. I think as far as shot goes, the opening credits are very cool. It's just it's a takeoff on kind of like the Plan 9 credits where the actors' names on tombstones, and then there's a stop motion octopus, and then there's a stop motion flying saucers. It's very long. Like I said, it's about 3 minutes of an opening credit sequence, but it's cool. And it has stop motion, kind of like Pee-wee's Big Adventure had. So it's very Tim Burton as well. And starts just kind of setting the tone. So as far as that, I'll just go with opening credits.
Okay. Let's see. A couple other ones before we get to our final thoughts on the film. We already kind of talked about this, but cameo, king or queen, was there one that stood out to you? That was just in the
Bill Murray,
movie?
I guess.
Yeah, Bill Murray.
If it's not necessarily a cameo, but he was definitely a supporting player. He only had 3 or 4 scenes, and so he's pretty great.
Yeah, I thought he was good in this movie. Obviously, there was another one that stood out to me that I'm trying to remember. Who was it that I like? Oh, who played Vampira?
Oh, Vampira was Lisa Marie, who
Not Presley.
No, just Lisa Marie, who was Tim Burton's girlfriend at the time. And before Helena Bonham Carter, who then was cast in a lot of Tim Burton stuff, he likes to cast his ladies.
Mm-hmm.
She was also in Mars Attacks as the alien that Martin Short brings to the White House that does not speak, which is a very vampire thing. Can I play the part mute? But she's good. So she was in that, and so she did. Oh, she's in Tim Burton Planet of the Apes too. I think that's the last one.
Okay.
Before she went bye-bye, and then he started dating Helena Bonham Carter, and then
And
now
she's
we see
in
her
it.
in Big Fish and
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, and yeah.
So here's something I didn't know. Again, that there was an Elvira before Elvira.
Oh, Vampira, yeah.
I did not
That
know
was
of
her.
Vampira beforehand.
And yeah, watching that last night, who I was watching it with, she said, I thought that was Elvira the whole time. Like she thought that was based on Elvira. And
Well, that's what I thought at first. And I was like, wait a minute,
nobody knows. Yeah.
that doesn't line up chronologically here. And then
No. So
I
they're-
go into the Vampira deep dive and I start reading about
Yeah.
Vampira and then found out that she sued Elvira for
Yeah.
stealing her act and lost. So must have had a
I don't
terrible
know how she
lawyer.
lost because it's exact same character, barely changed the name, watches old scary movies and makes fun of them on TV. It's
It's the same act.
It's not do-do-do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's
Ding.
totally different.
It's totally different. I have a ding, Yeah. She has a bangs and Elvira had bangs
Right.
and Vampira didn't. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was.
Vampira was David Bowie and Queen, and Elvira is Rob Van Winkle.
I interviewed Elvira one time.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't remember what it was for, and I remember it was right after. I hope I'm not saying this wrong. She had some sexuality awakening, I think, in her book. I'm not sure exactly. I don't want to misquote it, but that's what I think we're talking about, her book and that. And she said she lost a lot of followers for it or whatever. And then I think I swore on the air by accident because I was like, screw them, But I
Right.
think I said something else. And then I asked her about WrestleMania 2, which she was in WrestleMania 2, like for a second. But I don't actually remember it being that great of an interview, not because of her, but because of me. But anyway, Elvira, Vampira, I liked seeing Vampire. I liked learning about that. So I'm gonna give her the cameo queen, even
You
though
give Lisa Marie. Yeah, she's funny in it too. I don't think in real life she was that involved in Ed Wood's life. She probably wasn't at Bela Lugosi's funeral. I think all she did was she was in Plan 9 and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So before we discuss if we recommend this movie, which is probably obvious to the people who are listening, I want to do something in real time. I don't know if you've ever seen this or not. I haven't seen it yet, but I always like, after I find a movie that I really enjoyed, seeing the Eper and Roper review, or Siskel and Eper, whichever one it is.
Okay.
And so here's Siskel and Eber's Ed Wood review. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay, so we're going to be watching this together for the first time, reacting to it live on the pod. So here we go.
Ah, yes, Plan 9 deals with the resurrection of the dead. Long-distance electrodes shot into the pineal and pituitary glands of the recent dead.
You know, maybe you guys were right. Plan 9 is a good title.
That's Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, an energetic young film director in the 1950s who stopped at nothing to create some of the worst, most laughable pictures of all time. And this movie called Ed Wood, directed by the always inventive Tim Burton, is simply marvelous. It's one of the great movies about movie making. It's in love with filmmaking and the directing impulse. I really like this picture. I think it should be required viewing in every film school in America. And why? Because it's about a guy who loves his work despite all the roadblocks put in front of him. Ed Wood is presented here as a cheerful, decent, slightly weird optimist. I love this guy. Here he is getting ready to direct one of his low-budget specials, and his fiancée, Sarah Jessica Parker, is steamed that he gave the key roles to would-be actors who gave Ed money to get the film made in the first place.
See, the usual gang of misfits and dope addicts are here.
Janet, I want you straight...
Say, who's the lug?
I want you staying away from the old Willow's place.
Why, that's Tony McCoy. He will be portraying Lieutenant Dick Craig.
Really? How much money did he put up?
None.
I want you...
But his dad gave me 50 grand.
I want you staying...
Wood Production's the mark of quality.
One of the strangest things about Ed Wood, he liked to dress in women's clothing. He played a cross-dresser in his first feature film, the cult classic Glenn or Glenda.
And cut! Print that. Let's move on.
Don't you want a second take for protection?
What's to protect? It was perfect. Come on.
Ed Wood accepted the first take almost every time, always saying, it's perfect. He didn't have time or money to waste, and I also think he just loved making any shot.
Let's move on.
Don't you want to do another take, Ed? Looks like Big Baldy had a little trouble getting through the door.
No, it's fine. It's real. You know, in actuality, Lobo would have to struggle with that problem every day.
One of the best parts of the movie is the real-life friendship that developed between young Ed and veteran horror star Bela Lugosi, who late in his life was a drug addict rescued by Ed's undying admiration. Martin Landau is dead-on brilliant as Lugosi.
Mr. Lugosi, why are you buying a car?
I'm planning on dying soon.
No.
Yes, I'm embarking on another bus and truck tour of Dracula, 12 cities in 10 days, if that's conceivable.
Do you know that I saw you perform Dracula in Poughkeepsie in 1938?
Ed is so passionate about making movies, he'll do anything to raise funds. Anything. Even get his goofy troupe of misfit actors to undergo a group baptism so that some wealthy Baptists will finance Ed's science fiction opus, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Bill Murray is one of the troupe.
How do you do it? How do you get all your friends to get baptized? Just so you can make a monster movie.
It's not a monster movie. It's a supernatural thriller.
And wait till you see the loving recreation of Plan 9. Ed Wood is filmed in gorgeous black and white that is a tribute to the 50s and to the black and white movies of Ed Wood.
Mr. Wood, do you know anything about the art of film production?
Well, I like to think so.
That cardboard headstone tipped over. This graveyard is obviously phony.
Nobody will ever notice that. Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
This film is just beautiful to look at, photographed by Stefan Zapsky. Ed Wood's movies were so bad they had to be made by a man who loved his work. They were innocent fun, and this movie called Ed Wood is a tribute to creative passion and also to friendship. I loved every single bit of it, and I hope that it will inspire people interested in making films to follow their dreams and not just view movie making as a way to make money. Congratulations all the way around on this picture. It's one of the year's very best.
Well, you know, Gene, I share your delight, and I also enjoyed every moment of this movie. You know, one of the key things in the movie, I think, is the way that Johnny Depp finds the right tone for the performance. Great. Because when I heard about this project involving this notorious cross-dresser, Ed Wood, who made these terrible films, I thought it was going to be some kind of a smarmy put-down. But actually, I didn't take into account Tim Burton, who I've met a couple times. He has a very sweet, optimistic, positive personality, and a lot of that is reflected in Johnny Depp's performance as Ed Wood. I mean, he's such a positive guy.
Yes.
You can't put him down. At one point, somebody says to him, "Are you a homosexual?" And he says, "No, I'm a cross-dresser." Yeah. He's just so happy to share whatever it is with whoever wants to talk to him.
A couple of stories. Once when I started as a film critic, somebody said to me, you know, there's this old story about this producer who would applaud at the end of every movie.
Yes.
Because he knew how hard it was to get any movie made.
Yes.
That's the spirit of this picture. And the other thing is, I once had George Lucas tell me, he said, you can divide the directors of the world into those who like people and those who don't. It's an interesting way to think about movies. Tim Burton loves people, and he loves this character.
He loves people. He also loves monsters from outer space.
Wow, what a recommendation.
All right. We don't need to say anything.
I did not think that they would go that hard for Ed Wood, but they rode for that movie.
Choice of phrase. Yes, they sure did. They were very excited.
They were very excited by it. Now, first off, shout out to Siskel and Ebert with their name drops. Met Tim Burton. Met George Lucas.
George Lucas.
And it's funny that Roger Ebert thought, I thought this movie was going to be about a delusional crossdresser, or whatever he said at first.
It shows the times that was such a focus on things like we mentioned before. But it's true. It could have been a movie making fun of people, like a cool movie, and it's so sweet. Like it
is sweet.
I would like to think as a person, I would do the sweet version, but I probably would do the make fun of version, and it wouldn't be as good. I would be like, look at these guys kind of movie. We need to be more, I think in life, like a little bit of the movie Ed Wood as opposed to the real life Ed Wood.
I think it does kind of ride a line though, and it kind of depends on which side of the line you view it from. Because it could be a what's the comedic term for it's not cynicism, it's a help me out here. It's a type of comedy. Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? It's a type of comedy where you're making fun of the people, but you don't realize that they're being made fun of.
Oh, well, it's just, you could do a very dry.
But there's a word for it. There's a word for it. What's the word?
Juniper.
I know. There's a word for. I'll think of it in a minute. But you could look at it from that way, right? To where it's not cynicism. It's the. Oh crap!
It's not sarcastic, but
Jeff, this is going to drive me crazy. Not dark comedy, self-deprecating, high comedy, situational parody, surreal. It's like parody. It's like farce.
Tell me a comedian you're thinking of that does it.
Oh crap! Well, there's a specific play that I'm thinking of that I just cannot think of the type of humor it's called. Oh man, this is so annoying. And there's people screaming in their ears right now on what it's called.
Oh, to be fair, they've all stopped watching. They're not.
Oh, they're not. They didn't make it to this far in?
No. We're an hour and a half in and we're trying to figure out a word for a comedy style.
This is so annoying. But it's like where you make fun of somebody, but it's not.
It's tongue in cheek in a way.
Tongue in cheek, maybe.
Like,
I'll think of it later.
I get what you mean. It's parody with a straight face.
Right. So you could look at this movie from that perspective of they're actually making fun of all these people in an earnest way.
Spinal Tap would be a good
Spinal Tap
of that, where it's not winking at the camera. It's you kind of have to know this is a joke if you're smart.
Right. This is a joke if you're smart. If you're not smart, you find this to be.
You think it's.
Yeah, just pleasant.
Maybe we're not smart.
Well, that's definitely the case. I can't think of the word that I've used.
I didn't realize that till just now. Maybe we fell for it. That we thought it was sweet. The whole world fell for it. We fell in love with a not good person.
Man, Jeff, why can't I think of it? Anyway, I recommend this movie.
Comment below.
I recommend this movie wholly. I really was so. I found myself to be in love with the film. I really was in love with the movie at the end of it. And yes, there's a lot of. I've immediately thought of The Disaster Artist. That was in my notes. And then I started to think of what is the worst movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space or The Room. I actually think The Room is just a bad movie.
I get joy out of watching The Room too, but I also like going to open mic comedy or shows and the comedians that are really, really bad and don't really have jokes. I'm the one that laughs the hardest because I like terrible. Which is why I'm a fan of Brad Gilmore. So, hey, I said that with a straight face too. But I definitely, I guess it's kind of like Siskel and Ebert did a good job for us. They summed it up a lot as
They
well.
really did.
You appreciate that. And it is hard, a lot of work. I used to, for a few years, I was a co-founder of a
Satire
horror film festival. Satire. You got it.
You could look at this movie like a satire.
It's
Go ahead.
satire.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I ran or co-ran a horror film festival. And so I would get submissions from young filmmakers. And it was me and this one other person that had to watch all of them. And as a wannabe filmmaker, I have submitted to film festivals as well. So I know, to your point you mentioned before, putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I would, even though I didn't want to, I would watch them all the way through, because I hated the thought that when I submitted something, somebody put it on for 1 minute and went, nope, and tossed the DVDs. Just tell you how long ago it was, DVDs. So I had a big stack of DVDs. But I watched them all the way through, as painful as it was a lot of the time. But these are people's hopes and dreams, and what they found was important. They put a lot of time and effort into it. And so that gets appreciated, and that really sums up what the movie Ed Wood is all about. It was what he thought was important and put it out there, which a lot of people don't do.
You know, I agree, because I like the story of the guy applauding, the producer applauding after movies are made, because you don't know how hard they are. There's things that I've done in the wrestling business where we've produced and filmed it, and kind of, there's one in particular, and that if you look at it, just looking at it, you'd be like, oh, this is kind of strange or whatever. This is a weird wrestling angle. But when we made it that night, everybody was so excited, and we were high-fiving, and we were like, this is amazing. Like, oh, and then, oh, you remember this? And then we had to do this. You don't understand how hard it was to get this shot, or to do this, or to do that. And there's a camaraderie in filmmaking, which I also think comes through in their rap party in this movie, when they rap and they're having at the meat locker, and they're all enjoying it. And then Ed Wood comes out in drag, and they're having all fun. And it's an experience to make a film. It's an experience to make something creative, whether it be an album or a documentary or a book or whatever you do with a group of people who are all thinking singularly but acting collectively and trying to put together something truly that they believe in, that although it might not be great to the world en masse, it is great moments that they are having creating it. And that's why I think Ed Wood resonated with me so much, and I could not strongly recommend it enough. I think it's better than The Phantom. I'll be honest with you. I love The Phantom, but it's a better movie than The Phantom. But I still have love.
It's a very different movie.
Very different movie. Hard to compare the two. Really hard to compare.
I will say, because I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to say another movie that I would recommend that's kind of along that line, but I didn't want to make it another Pic Six movie, because they're not all going to be about movies making movies. But there is a documentary. So it's a documentary, it's real, called American Movie. And it's from 1999. And it's about a filmmaker named Mark Borchardt. And he's making a movie. He's been working on this movie forever. He lives in Wisconsin. He's been making this movie forever that's called Coven. But it should be Coven, because that's how it's pronounced. But he doesn't like the way Coven sounds like oven, man. So it's Coven. And it's a documentary directed by Chris Smith, no relation, who later did Mr. McMahon on Netflix, and also Tiger King, the big COVID sensation on Netflix as well. And it's basically where you follow another kind of Hollywood dreamer that the odds are against him. He's not necessarily good at what he does, but he's got a buddy. He's got one friend that goes along with him through thick and thin, and he's had a tough time. He's got like an ex-wife. He's got kids, and American Movie I highly recommend. American Movie. I'm looking it up right now. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So this is watch the trailer. If you watch the trailer, I think you'll be interested enough to try to find it. It's probably one of my favorite documentaries of all time, because it has that same inspiring thing. And it reminds me of what you were saying. How many times when you get a review or feedback from someone else that does something creative, the first thing they usually say is, good job finishing it. Yeah. Like when you wrote your book, people that have done that probably said a lot of, before they even compliment if it's good or not, they say, good job finishing it. Because everybody that does this knows that's insane. I whenever I do an interview with somebody,
whether it's a movie or a book or whatever, I always say congratulations on the book, congratulations on the movie, because it is.
It's done.
Because this is before we know if it's a success or not, before we know if critics like it or not. I'm telling you right now, congrats on it, because this is a difficult thing that you just achieved. It's so hard. It's so hard. You know, I used to tell somebody, about the wrestling show. I'm like, yeah, it's 42 minutes, but there's so many hours that go into those 42 minutes.
Right.
So many hours that go. That book might be 200 pages, but there's so many hours that go into those 200 pages. The documentary might be 90 minutes, but there's so many hours.
You could do a Clue podcast that's, if you watch it, it's an hour and a half, it's not an hour and a half, but it's a lot of hours put together. But it's 2 hours.
Yeah.
And what were we doing at the end of that podcast? We just kept saying, I can't believe we finished it.
I can't believe we finished. I was shocked that we finished it.
We got here.
But Ed Wood, strong recommend from me and from Jeff Smith. This has been another episode of Pic Six, and I'm about to drop it on you of the next movie.
Oh, yeah.
My next pick for Pic Six.
For me.
You said that you have not seen this movie. There's been a lot of news about this franchise in the world as of late. So the next movie will be the, at first, critically panned, but now critic favorite of the franchise. It's going to be on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, okay,
starring George Lazenby as James Bond.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm excited. Okay.
Yes. So we will watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service for the next episode of Pic Six. That's Jeff Smith. Where can they find you again? Jeff Smith Movie Guy?
Yeah, that's right. Instagram, Jeff Smith Movie Guy.
At Brad Gilmore, BradGilmore.net, till that other jabroni wants to give up the .com. And
we'll get him.
We'll see you in the next episode of Pic Six.
Based only on the secret testimony of the miserable souls who survived this terrifying ordeal. The incidents, the places. My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Can your heart stand the shocking facts of the true story?